Yesterday, tragically, a Mormon church was shot up and then lit on fire. 4 people have been killed, 8 people have been injured. Immediately after this attack, Donald Trump went to Truth Social and posted that this was another attack on Christians. And immediately, a lot of people started saying that this was a left wing radical that was going after Mormons. It ended up not being that. But one debate that started breaking out then was suddenly whether or not Mormons are even Christian at all. A lot of people saying Mormons are not Christian, like feel bad for them. Sorry this happened, but Mormons are not Christians. And interestingly, this is what led to the shooting anyway. Apparently, they're still investigating, but allegedly, what happened was this guy who shot up the place he was conservative, Trump supporting, right wing, and Christian, and he believed Mormons to be the Antichrist. He believes Mormons are not Christian. And according to eyewitnesses or people that are close to eyewitnesses, he went into the church and he basically said to them, "Who do you believe in, Jesus Christ or Joseph Smith?" And then he shot them. This is testimony from a guy that take this for what you will. The guy that we're going to watch is, he's hearing this secondhand from people who were involved or people who know people who are involved, but word spreads pretty quickly in Mormon circles. It's not a huge religion with a huge population, and so a lot of people know each other, and so there's a good chance that Mormons would know exactly what happened inside of this church. And this is what he has to say.
I just got out of church and learned about the terrorist attack that happened in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Michigan. My heart's been so heavy this morning already, learning about the death of President Nelson at 101, and then to read this news, it's just been, I can't even fathom it. And I wanted to share some of the early insights that I'm getting from friends that have people that were there in the congregation. So my friend Jeanette, she shared this. She said, "This is my sister-in-law's stake, and here's what she just sent." It says, "A man crashed his car into the chapel, covered the building with gasoline, and then went around sacrament meeting with a gun, asking people if they believed in Jesus or Joseph Smith. If they didn't answer fast enough, he shot them. Then he lit the building on fire. It roared into an inferno and collapsed while there were still people inside." And then this came from her brother's friend who was there. He says, "Okay, here's what happened. The bishopric member was bearing his testimony. There was a large boom. The choir seats caved in. Panic ensued. Then they hear shots, more panic. His wife and he were able to run out of the west foyer. Loud shots were there. That's where the gunman was coming in. We turned around, ran out of the back of the church. We have woods back there. More shots. They go deeper into the woods, walking through a stream. His wife was laying in tall grass, opposite the side of clearing in a stream valley. Lots of sirens. The police gathered us in a pavilion. We sat by families. He and his wife were there together. Some people are missing. Some members have been shot. A bishopric member was shot in the stomach. Still missing a couple. We're now in our Jehovah's Witness neighbor church parking. Building is gone. We're now walking to buses so we can be driven somewhere. They will then take statements from everyone." I mean, it's heavy, you guys.
Okay, so this is what so that's what they're saying, is that this shooter went into the church, and there's reports that he was yelling at people and saying, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ or do you believe in Joseph Smith?" Apparently, he had gone to a few meetings. The shooter had gone to some meetings and was pretty vocal in the community. And he was, they said that he was friendly and that he didn't seem violent, but that he definitely voiced his disdain for Mormons and saying that they're basically believing in the Antichrist and that they're not real Christians. And so it's interesting that on social media, right when this has gone on, and if the motive of this shooter is, "You're not real Christians," and mind you, this happens right after Tyler Robinson, who comes from a Mormon family, is accused of killing Charlie Kirk. And so, you take this Mormon connection, and then now you've got a church being shot up by a guy who says Mormons are the Antichrist. Then, and this is the issue, is that, when Donald Trump says there's an attack on Christians, that's because there's been all of these targeted attacks, because there's this rhetoric that Christians are these bad people, or Christians are the enemy, or Christians are holding society back, or whatever it is. And that causes people to get really angry. And then they end up doing these really horrific attacks. And so if we're going to blame the rhetoric of the left, then I think we have to blame the rhetoric. If you're going to go down that road and say, well, the left's rhetoric caused this insanity, and now you've got all these shooters that are left-wing shooters targeting all these conservatives and all these Christians, then I think, and especially, and we're going to get into this, Islam and even Judaism, but in particular Islam, I think it really paints a real picture of what's going on here. If you're going to go down that path of it's the rhetoric, then you have to say it's also the rhetoric of saying this particular group is not Christian, this particular group is the Antichrist. Not that I'm saying we have to ban this sort of chatter. I don't think you should ban it. I just think that there should be some awareness. And I think what's interesting about this lack of awareness is that the very same Protestant Christians or evangelicals, typically it's more the evangelical wing of Protestants, many of them were very quick to point out right after Charlie Kirk died that a bunch of people on the left were saying, yeah, but I didn't like the guy. I mean, forget him. Or that liberals in Congress were unwilling to vote on a measure that honored Charlie Kirk when every single Republican voted on a measure to demonize or to condemn the violence against the Democrats that were killed. There's a difference, though, between condemning violence and honoring a person. And that's what the left had a problem with. They didn't want to honor Charlie Kirk. They wanted to condemn the violence against him. But that's not what the measure said. So that same group that is really quick to point all this out, the same group that says, how dare you, Charlie Kirk, he's killed, and immediately your reaction is to demonize him. And it's that same very group of people are the very same people online who are now basically going after Mormons on the same day Mormons are being attacked for not being Christian enough. I mean, that is what this attacker allegedly, we're going to get more information. But if it's true that this attacker was attacking Mormons because he's Christian, but he's a certain type of Christian and he doesn't believe they're Christian, then it is really in poor taste for a lot of people to be going online and demonizing Mormons for not being Christian. That is what fueled this guy's insanity. And now that is, I don't think that debate, it's not like I'm thinking that debate shouldn't be had. I think it's fine to have that debate. I just think it's hypocritical for that debate to be happening from the same very group of people who were criticizing the people who didn't want to honor Charlie Kirk or didn't even care that he was killed. I mean, there was plenty of people that didn't even care. Let me just show you some of the posts. These are just some of the tweets that are out there that I'm talking about that started circulating online. Here's Christian tweets. No, Mormons are not Christians. Yes, every church should be a safe place to worship. Here's another one. Religion is under attack, but this is not a Christian house of worship. One wouldn't say Christianity is under attack if it were a mosque, a Buddhist temple, or a Jewish synagogue. Still a tragedy and offense against liberty, but distinctions matter. Mormons are not Christians. Here's another really long post. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but essentially this person, this tweet, this is from Protestia. Amid the attack on the Mormon church, here's a quick reference for folks wanting to know what Mormons believe. While you read it, ask yourself, is this biblical Christianity? And then at the end of it, he goes and kind of gives a rundown of some of the Mormon beliefs and basically says, in short, there are neighbors that we ought to care about and care for, but they are not Christian believers. Some, however, defended the Mormon church. And this is Tyler Silverman saying, if your response to an LDS shooting being shot up and burnt down, but Mormons aren't Christians, you've lost the plot. I personally would like places of worship to stop being violently attacked, regardless of whether I agree with their beliefs or not. So it's an interesting debate. And the reason why it matters, it doesn't matter about Mormons in particular. This is an overall debate that I think matters historically because it's been the root cause of a lot of violence, if not most religious violence, maybe even all religious violence, boils down to this one line of thinking. You are not one of us, right? I think all religious violence certainly boils down to that. But we could even carve it out more. And a lot of religious violence is actually within the same in-group, but it's one group within that in-group not believing the other group is whatever that is enough. For example, a really good example to lay this out is Sunni versus Shia Islam. Now, most Sunnis in the world are not violent. Most Sunnis in the world just want to practice their religion, and they are not violent. But pretty much all of the real major terrorist organizations that we're really afraid of come from Sunni Islam, not Shia Islam, as much as the Israelis want to claim that it's Iran and the Shias. It's actually the Sunnis that have more of the radical sects of Islam, and that would be the Salafist, Wahhabism. These are the ones that are rooted. This is where Al Qaeda, ISIS, all of the real radical style Islam, where they want to create caliphates, that really comes from Sunni, a particular branch within Sunni, and which is really nurtured and harbored in Saudi Arabia, even though they claim, oh, it's Iran. It's actually Saudi Arabia. And so what happens with these Sunnis? The group that's most under attack by these Sunnis, I know a lot of Christians are worried about, oh, these radical Islamic terrorists are coming for us. But the group that actually is attacked the most by these Sunnis is actually Shia Muslims. And it's because Sunnis believe that you and I, who are not Muslims, are, these particular Sunnis, not all Sunnis, I got to be clear on that. But these particular Sunnis believe that you and I are, we're like, heathens. We don't know God. And they basically say to us, convert or die, right? That's kind of their thinking. But Shia Muslims to them are worse, because this is a group, they view them as like the Antichrist. They're worse than just non-believers, that it's either convert or die. They instead, in their mind, are spreading the wrong form of Muslim. They believe they're Muslim, but they're not Muslims, and they're spreading the wrong form of Muslim, and they just die. And that's the only recourse for them. There's no convert or die. It's just you die, because you've now caused like a bastardization of the religion. And that thinking of you're not Muslim, right? It's the Sunnis saying to the Shias, you're not Muslim because you practice this other. And it's not just Sunnis against Shias. They definitely think that mostly of Shias, but it's also this Sunni group. They think that of other Sunnis as well that aren't Sunni enough, right? They're like, you're not Sunni enough. And I think that's a really good example of what I'm trying to get across here. When these Protestant, particularly, it's mostly Protestant Christians, particularly the evangelical wing of Protestants, that are the ones very quick to point the finger at other groups and say, you're not Christian. You're not a real Christian. They do it not just to Mormons. They do it to Catholics. They say Catholics aren't Christian. If you say Catholics are Christians, they say, no, they're not. Mormons are Christian. No, they're not. Right. And they even think other Protestants aren't Christian enough. And this group, they have more of a, they feel like they're on a mission, and that there's a mission in life in order to convert people to the ways of Jesus and to preach and to get people to convert. And, they feel more of a mission towards this. And that would be kind of like this Sunni group. It's equivalent to this Sunni group that also believes that you need to believe in our brand or else. Westboro Baptists, that's another group that kind of hails from this sort of line of thinking. And they were very quick some of them turned very violent and would go out and shoot up like abortion clinics or something along those lines. So there is within, and you could even say this inside of Judaism, there's the Orthodox Jews who don't believe any other Jews are Jews. You've got Orthodox and Christian, conservative Jews and reformist Jews, and Orthodox tend to say you're not really a Jew. But then you've got these secular Jews that are Zionists, and they think if you're not a Zionist, you're not a Jew. They're like, you're an enemy now, right? And they do murder. They're very murderous. The Zionists are. So within each group, and I kind of want to break this down, within each of the three main Abrahamic religions, there's various different branches. Inside of Islam, there's Sunni Islam, there's Shia Islam. There's other forms of Islam as well. Let me actually kind of break this down for you in these branches of Islam. So there's Sunni, there's Shia, there's also, and those are the main two people know about, but there's also Ibadi, and there's also Sufi traditions inside of Islam. So there's like four big branches of Islam. Two of them are the ones that you really know. Inside of Christianity, there's really three main branches. Two that you really know. That would be Catholicism and Protestants. And then there's also Orthodox, which people tend to forget about. But there's Catholicism, Protestants. We know those two because there's just always been a big war between those two. But then there's the Orthodox. And then there are the Restorationist Christian groups. And that's where Mormons fall under. They fall under the smaller, but still under the Christian umbrella of Restorationists. And if you asked any Muslim, Is a Catholic Christian? They'd say yes. Is a Muslim Christian? They'd say yes. Is a Protestant, is a Baptist Christian, is a Lutheran Christian, is a Methodist Christian, is an evangelical Christian? They would say yes, they all believe in Jesus as the Christ. That's what makes them Christian. Just like Christians do not differentiate between Muslims. Christians just kind of say Muslims are Muslims are Muslims. I don't care if you're a Shia Muslim, a Sunni Muslim, or an Alawite or a Druze, you're still in that Muslim branch and you're Muslim. And the same thing for Jews. If you're a Jew, you're a Jew, right? They don't care what kind of Jew you are. They just don't. It's just, if you're a Jew, you're a Jew. And in fact, you don't even have to practice a religion to be a Jew. You could just be culturally a Jew and you're still a Jew. So I don't understand this debate of carving out certain groups are not Christian when they obviously fall under the umbrella of Christianity. But it's just that there are these certain sects within each of the three branches. Like I pointed out, the real Salafist Wahhabi Sunnis, and you've got the evangelical Protestants, and then you have the Zionist Jews, and they basically are violent. One, they can become violent. Now, I would say that the Protestant evangelicals are less violent of all of the violent groups. Certainly the most violent, in my opinion, is the Sunni Salafist Wahhabists. I think they are the most violent, and they feel like violence is the way to get to their end goal. I'd say Zionists are giving them a run for their money, committing a genocide. But I would still say that, in my opinion, that the Sunni Wahhabists, Salafists are more violent. There's more of these groups. They're spread around the world, and they definitely commit acts of violence all over. And there's a lot of people fleeing their violence. And the Zionists certainly are creating a lot of violence. And then you've got inside of Christianity, these Protestants, these evangelical Protestants, who have a tendency toward being violent. It's more rare. I mean, if you go back historically, I think that there would be, this argument would be different. And you could say, well, it's the Catholics that were more violent, or you could say it was the Protestants. I mean, if you're Irish, you'd say it was the Protestants that were more violent. If you're the Crusades, it would be the Catholics. I mean, there's all of these different time periods where religion has caused a lot of violence. But right now, the world we're living in right now, we're seeing this sort of rise of you're not one of us. And we're seeing it within the three branches of Abrahamic religions, which is really what I want to point out. Inside the three branches in this era, I don't want to go back and talk about the Crusades or all these various different, those are different times. We're living in the now. And in the now, what we're seeing is this rise of, it's almost like nationalism, but it's like religious nationalism, but that's not the right word for it. But it's certainly religious allegiance, or it's like religious Puritanism in a way. Like, if you're not one of us, then you're just not one of us. And that means, it can lead to a convert or die. And essentially, if this, or just die. I mean, if you're a Zionist, there's no conversion. They're not offering that. Islam, at least, often offers it, but not against Shias. And in this case, this guy did allegedly walk into the church and point at people and say, Jesus Christ or Joseph Smith. And if they didn't answer fast enough, or whatever, or he was yelling that while he was shooting, it's unclear. But I want to show you this. Because also one thing is, I don't ever hear that coming from Catholics or Mormons. I don't ever hear them saying about other groups, like, you're not Christian. I think they say you're Christian, but you're just misled. You're not the right type of Christian. But I don't think they would claim you're not Christian. But it's really coming from one particular group, and it's interesting. So this is a graph of how religions view each other, how people within religions view each other. And let me just make this larger. Latter-day Saints. So Latter-day Saints are on the main part of the graph, or on the left side, just in white, just the left side. I don't know, right? This way, right here, this part right here. This is the group they're asking, and the graph itself is, they're asking the group on the sidebar about all of the groups that are vertical. So, for example, the first group is Protestants, and they're asking Protestants, how do you feel about? They don't ask them about evangelical Christians or mainline Protestants, because that is their group, so they don't ask them about that. But then they ask them about Catholics, and actually Protestants have a net positive viewpoint of Catholics at 21, plus 21. Mormons, they have a net negative of -8. Jews, they have a real positive plus 35. And Muslims a negative 13, and atheists a negative 29. And under Protestants, they actually break this down even more. And they've got the born again evangelicals, and then they have the non born again or not born again or evangelical. So they have the more traditional Protestant versus like the evangelical wing of Protestants, because I think there is a distinction there. And with the born again, you'll notice that they have more negative viewpoints and positive viewpoints. So they have more negative viewpoint of they have more negative viewpoint of Mormons at negative 12, a more positive viewpoints of Jews at 39 plus 39, negative 20 for Muslims, negative 40 for atheists. They have a plus 22 for Catholics. Traditional Protestants, however, have a slightly less negative or less positive view of Catholics with plus 20. It's still pretty high. But Mormons, regular Protestants, only have a negative 1 on them. Jews, a plus 28, negative 2 on Muslims, and a negative 15 on atheists. And then when you go to like Catholics have almost a net positive on everybody, viewpoint on everybody except Muslims and atheists. They've got a plus 4 on evangelicals, plus 22 on mainline Protestants, plus 2 on Mormons, plus 29 on Jews, negative 1 on Muslims, negative 11 on atheists. But look at the Mormons. They're like smack dab in the middle of the chart, and they don't have a negative view of anybody. I mean, think about that. Like, here's the poor Mormons. Everybody's ragging on them, and they're in the middle of the chart, and you see it's all blue except Catholics. Catholics are the only group that have a net positive view of Mormons, but everybody else has a net negative view of Mormons, and the Mormons have a net positive view of everybody. That's how nice Mormons are. They have a viewpoint positive of everybody. Plus 43 of evangelical Christians, plus 51 of mainline Protestants, plus 53 of Catholics, plus 58 of Jews, plus 37 of Muslims, plus 6 of atheists. I mean, Mormons even like the atheists. Jews, here's what's interesting though. I just want to point this out. This is kind of interesting on this chart. Jews have a negative 40 viewpoint of evangelicals. What makes that really interesting is that besides Mormons, who really believe Jews are the chosen people, it's like evangelicals actually have the highest viewpoint of Jews at plus 39 in the entire bunch. Evangelicals have some of the highest viewpoints of Jews, but it doesn't work in reverse. Like, why do they not see that? I mean, it kind of makes sense to me, because if I were a Jew, I wouldn't like evangelicals either. I mean, I understand evangelicals are like, here's your country of Israel. Here's all the bombs you want. Bomb all the kids, bombs away. Go ahead. Bring back Jesus. But then it comes with this asterisk. And by the way, when Jesus comes back, you're all going to go away. Convert or die. Convert or die, Jews. That'll be the eradication of Jews when Jesus comes back. So I guess it makes sense to me why Jews would be like, okay, we kind of like you for a minute, but then, plot twist at the end. Now we don't really like you. I guess that makes sense. But I just wanted to point out this graph. This is kind of how all the religions view each other. And it's quite interesting that evangelicals, by and large, don't have a very good viewpoint. They have more of a negative viewpoint of other groups. Certainly, Jews also, they have a negative viewpoint of evangelicals. They have a negative viewpoint of Mormons, and they have a negative viewpoint of Muslims. And they actually have a positive viewpoint. They have the of atheists. They have the most of religious groups, because down at the bottom is agnostics and atheists and whatnot. So, but of the religious groups, Jews have the most positive viewpoint of atheists than any other group. And then Mormons have a positive viewpoint of atheists, and everybody else doesn't like the atheists. Anyway, it's just interesting to point out. It's interesting to point this out. But I think that when you're taking it at face value, these Christians that are like, you're not Christian if you're a Jehovah's Witness or if you're a Mormon or if you're a Catholic, anybody outside of the Christian faith would absolutely claim these groups are Christian. They believe in Jesus as the Christ. That's the criteria for being a Christian. You all disagree on various different things, but it's just like, we don't differentiate, and we say Shias and Sunnis are Muslims, and that's that. That's all there is to this. But the other aspect about this is just the hypocrisy that's really coming from this evangelical wing in particular, that didn't want anybody criticizing Charlie Kirk after his death, but are very quick to criticize Mormons and say, and you're not Christian, on the very day that a guy stormed into their church and said, I'm killing you because I don't think you're Christian enough. I don't think you're actually Christian. And so I'm going to kill you. It's a bit in poor taste. And it's also just hypocritical. But also, keep in mind, this is the same group of people that believe bombing children, it's totally needed in order, that's the way to love Jesus, is to bomb children in Palestine. I mean, that is the thinking. Of course, that's not everybody. I know I'm getting a lot of people mad about this, but certainly, within side, just like, I'm always quick to say with Sunnis, it's not all the Sunnis. It's a very small sect of Sunnis that turn into these Salafist, Wahhabi style, violent Sunnis. But nonetheless, Sunnis are able to recognize this and they say, yes, we agree there's this group. And so I just think Christians should maybe have that same sort of realization. But it is, I think, in poor taste and also a bit hypocritical to have this debate the day after a church has been shot up because somebody ran in and said, you're not actually Christians. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.